So let's talk about Carlos Berrios.
Let's talk about Carlos Berrios. What do you want to know?
So you started off as a DJ.
Yeah, I started off as a DJ. Actually, I started off as a child.
You started off as a child, Colombian.
That loved music.
Right.
And grew up in a house where my mom just absolutely loved music, and all she did was she played music all day, cleaning the house and that sort of thing. So I grew up listening to a lot of different things, like bossa nova, a lot of Brazilian music, Latin music, rock, Rolling Stones, Beatles, So I grew up with an appreciation for music, or at least I didn't realize that I liked music, but I liked listening. When it was on, I was always zoning out. But I think it was this one record. I was at a house party. I must have been maybe 9, I don't know, somewhere in there. And somebody at a party, somebody was playing Superfly. They were playing a 45 of Superfly, and I kept taking the needle and putting it back to the beginning after it was over, because I was fascinated with the whole record, until finally, they shooed me away. But that was my first, my first recollection of me being affected, by something I was listening to. And then later on, the same thing happened with Sol Makossa when that came out. The rhythm of it just totally, as a child, just blew me away, So yeah, later on, as I approached my early teens, 13, I became aware of DJs, and the initial DJs, because there wasn't really a big thing, But we had several in the neighborhood, and I became friendly with one of them. He was older than me, and I used to chase him around, begging him, please teach me how to DJ, And so he was always like, get away from me, kid, you bother me, And but one day he did. He took me up to a place, and he just showed me the basics, which it's just the basics of blending, and I blended my first record, which was probably some brass construction to some Kool and the Gang record, and he was like, hey, that's pretty good, And that was all I needed. After that, I was on a quest to get turntables and a mixer.
A little encouragement goes a long way, just for a young mind, right?
Yeah.
And you knew what you wanted to do. You already had the bug, right?
I had the bug. There was definitely an initial, that curiosity, that passion for wanting to figure out this thing, and it was fascinating. That you can blend, two pieces of music together. And of course, at 13 years old, just a simple clubman with with 2 faders and 2 levels and a crossfader, the Clubman 1-1, which is my first mixer. To me, that was like the space shuttle. I was like amazed, how this thing worked, and and then of course I burnt out the fader, and I had to learn how to replace it myself. So now I'm taking the thing apart, trying to solder, making a mess, have to get a new one, that kind of stuff.
That's crazy. I remember for me, I was probably about the same age too. We went to it was a teen club, and I heard this guy take 2 copies of Chic, Dance, 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 and he was echoing it back and forth. My buddy Rusty, who's still really one of my dear friends still, but just echoing. I go, how do you do that? That's so cool. Just, putting it a beat behind or 2 beats behind, and
right,
hooked, just amazing. It's just, you get the bug and you start, all you want to do is play. So being a young DJ now, what was your first gig about? What was the first gig like?
First gig was, cutting out of school and having people come over and play music for, just a few people. And, but I was always zoning out that way. So it became, I was always a shy person, shy kid to begin with. I barely spoke. They used to have to poke me to make sure I was still breathing. But it became, first of all, you internalize it. So you do it when you're alone, you have the speakers, you blast the music. If people are home, you still want to do it. So you put the headphones on and you find a way to sort of, just go inside, so I would go inside myself and just disappear into the music. But after a while, the challenge became, just from a technical DJ standpoint, was blending records at that time. Because I started in 1979. So that was like, all the records were live bands.
Yeah.
And so after a while, of doing it for so many hours, like all DJs, you learn it's going to speed up here, it's going to slow down here, over here it's going to do this thing, and you sort of adjust for it. So you become in tune with your vinyl, in a way. And so that's what I, that's what I wanted, and just spent an enormous amount of time. So then eventually I started doing house parties. And some of those became a little crazy because, when I grew up in the 70s in the place that I was at, there were a couple of crews that, they didn't get along. So every time they showed up, there was always something crazy that happened, people trying to rob you and that sort of thing. But most of the house parties were really cool. And I learned a lot, like that, you sort of get an idea of what people are going to dance to, what they're not going to dance to, that sort of thing. And it's sort of, I think just created a foundation for me, because I still am affected very much by the music of that time. I listen to more of that than I do anything else. If I go back and listen to older music, I listen to music from the mid '60s into the late '70s. That's my favorite era.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I love that era too. It's I mean, that's kind of you're coming up. That's the age that you were coming up, so that's kind of instilled in your brain. Like, you can, you're still, everything was new and fresh. I think it's the same thing. I always had the theory about the music that you were in high school or around high school, and just kind of becoming your own person. Right around then is the time that you gravitate towards the music in your life. So, I mean, it's just the soundtrack of your life. Speaking of soundtrack, let's talk about Beat Street. Was it Beat Street? Was that
Beat Street,
yeah, that was the movie that was you were in Beat Street, or you were affected by Beat Street, or Frank Reyes?
I was definitely affected by Beat Street, but when Beat Street came out, I was in Texas, so that's a long arc from Flushing, Queens to to Texas. But there were 4 years of my life that I wasn't in New York. 2 years I lived in Barranquilla, Colombia, and I was born in Bogota, which is the capital of Colombia. But I was sort of, my parents got married in New York. And they lived in New York. My mom was in Colombia to visit her. I think it was her grandmother, who was not doing well. So she wanted to be there, just in case. And I ended up being born there. But almost immediately I was on a plane back to New York. So even though, I was born there, I was raised in New York, and didn't see Colombia again until I was 15. So that's when I went to go stay with my dad over there for 2 years. So I attended high school. I didn't do very well. I had a really hard time adjusting to my new environment. I was also, I was in the middle of being my teens and rebellious and, wanted, just mischievous and all that stuff, mischievous.
How was the culture different? Was it real different there? I mean, it was a day and night for you, or was it? I mean, you just speak the language? I mean, I'm sure there's a language barrier.
Well, it's one of those funny things because, when I grew up in New York, my mom, at home, she didn't speak English. She spoke Spanish. So up until the age of 6, I only spoke Spanish. And it wasn't until I went to kindergarten, then first grade, I started to, you're still at that young age where you'll pick it up. So by first grade, I was picked it up. Second grade, I was fine. And then just sort of never went back. So, I remember my friends used to comment that it was weird that my mom would speak to me in Spanish, me and my brother, and we would respond in English. They said, that's really weird. You don't really see that. But that's why I lost the language. So when I went back to Colombia, I had a hard time.
Well, I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm Colombian. I tell them, I was born here. They're like, yeah, we don't see it. There's no evidence, that you were born in Colombia. But over time you pick it up. And in that particular city, Barranquilla, it's a coastal city, and they have their own dialect, which is very slangy. So that was the dialect that I picked up eventually, me and my brother. But as far as the culture, this was the reason why it was difficult. My father, who wasn't really with us, he was. My mom and dad separated when I was about 7, so he became an architect, and he was traveling the world as a design engineer for different construction companies. But mainly, there's one huge construction company, which I heard doesn't even exist anymore. But at the time, they were, I think, the largest in the world, Morrison Knudsen, based out of Boise, Idaho. So he had just come from Saudi Arabia, where they built this military city for the Prince of Saudi, and then there was a big job in Colombia, on the coast. They were going to build. Exxon was building the largest coal mine in the world, in the desert out there, and they hired Morrison Knudsen to do the construction. So my dad, that's where he was going. So he said, "Listen, I'm going to go over there. The company, they take care of the family. They take care of the schooling, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. They'll get to go to a good school." So my mom said, "Yep, take them." So we ended up in Colombia. But what I didn't expect, first of all, I didn't want to go because I was in the middle of my DJ stuff, and I had my crew. After Dark already existed, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I was being ripped away from all of that. And
tough time right at that age. That must have been insane.
Oh, it was devastating. I mean, I was bawling like a baby on the plane.
I
My
bet.
first girlfriend, the whole thing. So, so over time, you start to realize that, what you're going to go to one of the best schools, which was actually a prep school, a college prep school, which is different from public school, the public schools that I was going to, and the kids that were going to this school were all either children of industry people, just people with money, and so while the American kids were being driven to school because it was the company had a bus and they would bus us to school. Everybody else was arriving, with chauffeurs and BMWs and Jaguars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what I mean, and that's just a little piece of it. After that, you're also dealing with, the income levels and that sort of thing. I mean, these were, these were families that had a lot of money. So when I first went to one of who ended up being one of my very close friends down there, a guy named Matt Cardenas in Spanish, Matt Cardenas. He became my buddy. And I remember the first time he invited me to his house, I walked in and I said, I remember I just looked around and I said, "This looks like a library." You know what I mean? Like I had never been in an atrium. That sort of thing.
Crazy, yeah.
That sort of thing. So it was a shock to me. It was a shock to me. And then I had to figure out like how I can find a way to fit. And it was the music that made it happen. So my stay there actually, and my necessity, my need to stand out and find a place for myself, is what gave me the drive to eventually get into music. Because what I did at 15 years old really was I was asking around about the biggest nightclub. I said, "Where's the biggest nightclub?" And I got permission from my dad, to go. And I was only 15 years old, but they didn't really have that kind of restriction back then. Plus I was tall anyway. So I went and I listened, and they didn't really, they weren't DJing. They were playing a record, letting it end, and then,
Nice.
and then they would play the next one. So I was like, "Oh man, I see a place for myself." So I went back and I found the DJ and I said, "Listen, first of all, I had to describe to him what DJing was, so I'm explaining to him in my broken Spanish. And I said, "I have the turntables and the mixer." And he goes, "Oh yeah?" And I said, "Yeah." And I had I think it was after the first year. I think it was in the second year when I went back to New York and I said, "I'm going crazy. I'm so, I just have nothing to do." So I bought 2 cheap turntables and a Clubman mixer and had them shipped down to Colombia. And I also bought what probably ended up being maybe 2 crates of whatever was brand new, brand new music. I went to Rock and Soul and bought 2 crates worth of music and shipped all that stuff down there. So I'm like, "Listen, I got 2 turntables, I got a mixer, I have 2 crates of the newest stuff that you guys have absolutely no idea, blah, blah, blah." So he's like, let's go get it. So he drove me, which was actually in hindsight was, dangerous because I didn't know this guy, I just met him. Right. But he drove me and we picked up my stuff, went back to the club, and I plugged in, and I ended up spinning from something like 11 o'clock, maybe 10:30 to like 1 in the morning. And they had never experienced this before. So they thought, they thought that it was some kind of a mixtape from Miami. So they were coming up to the booth and saying, "Listen, I want to buy that tape. I want to buy that tape." And they're like, "It's not tape, it's him."
Yeah.
So the owner came and he gave me carte blanche, to come and go. And it turns out that DJ was also the music director for the biggest radio station there, Universal Stereo. So he took me up to the radio station, and when I saw the editing machines, I started telling him about the editing, you know. So he got permission to take one of them, and we brought it to my, you know, to my apartment, and that was the first time that I cut, you know. So I did a mix. My first mix was played in Barranquilla, Colombia, over the radio, and I was a superstar at the school, you know. And I was playing in all, because he was playing in 2 or 3 nightclubs, so I would go and play with him after I taught him, and he became a really good DJ. His name is Tony Jimenez from Barranquilla, Colombia, and his nickname was TJ. He became an excellent DJ, and so, you know, that was the beginning. That was the beginning for me.
So cool. You made your mark, and then so you came back to New York, and then
Well, no, then I went to Texas.
Oh,
and,
then you went to Texas.
I went to Texas and I started breakdancing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Were you playing at all, or just breakdancing? You just said, I'm not going to DJ anymore. I'm just going to pop a
Well,
lot.
I couldn't find a DJ that would let me, because I didn't have my equipment. I went to Texas, you know, to try to go to college, you know. And I say try because it didn't work out. So I met one DJ who was popular. He DJ'd there's a nightclub, but he was like a jealous dude, so he wouldn't let me. You know, I showed him some stuff, and he was just like, "Okay, that's enough." You know, one of those.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, so I couldn't. You know, and where I was living, I didn't have the room to have, you know, equipment shipped down there. Plus, you know, my uncle that I was staying with was very, you know, very conservative, and he wasn't going to stand for that loud music anyway. So it just didn't happen. So it just turns out that I was, you know, walking through the mall one day, and I found a group of people breakdancing, you know, and this was in the era when all that stuff was going on. I'm going to say it was probably like 85. So I walk up to them, you know, and I became friendly with the leader. His name was Carlos Berrios. Him and his family became very close. You know, I mean, they took me in like a son, basically. Eventually, I ended up moving in with them. I was part of the family, and so, you know, they were really enamored by the breakdancing thing, and so we used to practice all the time. And I lied to them in the beginning because I told them. They said, "What's your specialty?" And I said, "Oh, I do windmills," you know, and I had no idea how to do windmills. You know? So whenever I would go back home, you know, I had a piece of cardboard, and my uncle was like, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I have to learn the windmill," you know.
Yeah, I know how to do it.
Yeah. Eventually, I learned it, you know, and then we had a little crew called the Almighty Players from Laredo, Texas, and we started winning trophies. We started doing contests. We were on the news. We were on the newspaper, you know. So you know, it was fun. It was just a lot of fun, you know. And there were also very young kids with us, you know. So it was exciting for them, you know, to give them something to be passionate about. And that lasted for about 2 years, and then that's when I came back to New York.
All right, cool. You still have the moves too? Can you still?
Okay, no.
I'm not going to ask you to do it. I was wondering, you know.
I probably could. I could probably still bust out some windmills.
Like if you're at a wedding or something like that, you bust out and you do a little. No.
Yeah, I've done it. You know, enough Captain Morgans. And,
You just got to make sure you stretch first. So you want to make sure. You know.
Yeah.
So now you go back to New York, and then
came back to New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you went. So now you're back in New York, and now you're popping and locking, and you're breaking. But are you back in the clubs now, or?
Yeah, no, that totally came to a stop. You know, once I arrived back in New York, and you know, I also, because I had met somebody in Texas, in Laredo, Texas, and on the way back to New York, because, you know, she came back with me. We made a stop in Chicago because that's where her father was, and we ended up getting married there. And so when I came back, you know, it was all about trying to, you know, get a job and that sort of thing. So, you know, I did, you know, what everybody else goes through. I think my very first gig was I was pushing a broom at LaGuardia Airport, you know, and I have hilarious stories about that because several of my buddies were doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, that's how I got in, because I had 2 or 3 friends that were doing it, and their boss ended up being one of our closest friends, and he was a character. He was a character, and his wife was a disciplinarian, so she was always after us. You know, we had some funny stories. You over at LaGuardia Airport. But that didn't last long. And then after that, I was a teller at Citibank. I was the worst teller in the world, and I stayed with that just until I was about to drop out of control. So in there was that about a year of me just basically falling into opportunities, with people who were trying to do the same thing, just trying to find the way in. But it was a friend of ours, his DJ. His name is Louis Martinez, and we call him. He used to go by Rock Hard Productions out of Brooklyn, and he landed a job at a place called Sync Sound, which I think is still in New York. It's one of the biggest complexes for mixing film, and so he was working there, and I was already editing. So I had already met Omar Santana, and he had already taken me, basically under his wing, and we were the hit squad. So we were editing.
How did you meet Omar Santana? Real quick, a little backstory about the Omar Santana. Yeah. He's considered one of the greatest editors too. Well, how did that all come about? How did you meet him? Was he at a club, or how did that happen?
No, it's it's funny because of what happened in Colombia with the reel to reel. The first thing I did when I came back was I bought a little TIAC, the guy that was like the box that everybody had, little guy. And that's where I learned how to do multiple editing. I had it in my head how to do it, but I remember I took like a whole summer. My friends would come over, they would leave, they would come over, they would drink. There was a stack of empty pizza boxes in the corner. It was just like an entire summer where I sat in front of this thing and didn't see sunlight at all until I learned how to edit. And my first mixtape.
I'm sorry, you were editing your show then from in Colombia. You were editing your show, so you already had some editing experience. But now
it wasn't right. But it wasn't. It wasn't really multiple editing. I wasn't doing that yet.
Right.
I wasn't doing that. That's what I did this summer, when I came back. So,
was it something that you picked up from KTU, or was it something you just wanted to learn how to do, or was it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even before I went to Colombia, remember, because the Latin Rascals were, I think, 82, something like that.
Right. Okay.
82, something like that. And what they did was just so outrageously different from what anybody else had ever tried to do. And even today, you listen to the tapes and they're very complex, like really deep level complex. Later on, when I spoke to Albert and I asked him, how did you do all that stuff? Because we were always trying to figure it out, because we knew it wasn't just editing, it had to be something else. So he told me they had an editing machine. But he was also, the way he really started was pause buttoning cassettes, the cassette deck. The way we learned how to do it. With a certain tape deck, you can do it, and if you do it on beat, you can create repetitions. You can create a loop, but you had to be really on point with your pause and unpause, right? So he did that. Then I moved on to the tape, and then they did a combination of the pause editing with the tape, and then they started to sort of do effects upon effects. So if they did pause buttoning, and then they would transfer that to tape, and then just keep doing it, and then paste that, and then pause button that, and then just so then all of a sudden you have these layers of effects going on, which were really outrageous,
Yeah.
So yeah, we all, the people that wanted to try to become editors or learn how to do it, that was the goal,
Right.
So
you spent the whole summer learning how to edit to do that. And then that's where you met Omar Santana. Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, what happened was I remember I went to Rock and Soul. I already was doing my mixtapes. I was handing out cassettes that said After Dark.
Oh, okay.
I was DJ After Dark, from the After Dark crew, So I was handing out these tapes, and they were a hit. Whoever could find them, So I was always making them and making copies and handing them out, and my name was out there, for these tapes.
Such a great time with the whole mixtape thing. What a great time for just DJs as a calling card and be able to just it's such a great time to just do that. Now it's like even on the internet it seems like
there's a lot.
You download it.
There's too much of everything.
Yeah.
but yeah, so and it's all innocent. I just, what happened was people started asking me for tapes. So I said, all right, let me make you a copy of my tape, but I'm going to put my name on it so that nobody says they made this tape. Everybody
Right.
knows I made this tape. That's the only reason why I did it. But the tapes started to get around. They were copying those tapes and blah, blah, blah. So one of them ended up in Omar's hands, and but before that, I knew that I had heard of, I went to Rock and Soul and I picked up some new records, and I picked up Leather and Lace, Tender Hearts.
Good one.
And Let Your Body Go. So I heard these edits, right? On the dub version. I heard these edits, and I immediately, because I was already doing stuff, so I knew what it was. And I said, oh my God. So I turned over the record, and it says Omar Santana, right? And bro, I was so jealous. I was like, oh my God, somebody beat me to it. Oh my God. And he's so good, he's got the coolest name in the world. Omar Santana is like, just sounded so cool. Yeah, so that happened, and then, at some point, somebody had, it was another editor, another up and coming editor. I think it was Albie Nieves. I think it was Albie. I don't remember. Albie Nieves came to my place one day, and he was with this dude, and he's like, "What are you doing?" Blah blah, and I'm rambling on, and I'm doing this, and I'm editing, and da da da, and I'm gonna do this, and blah, I'm gonna do mixtapes, and he's like, "Oh, cool, cool, cool," and the other guy's like, he's not saying anything, so I said, "Well, that's odd," And then about maybe 15 minutes in, they get up, and he's like, "All right, man, we're gonna leave you. We're gonna go." So he starts to walk out, and I couldn't. I said, "Yo, excuse me." I said, "You haven't said anything. What's your name?" And he said, "Oh, my name is Omar." And I said, oh, and the blood went, and I said, "Omar what?" And he said, "Santana." And I was like, "Oh, dip," So I said, "Dude, you're amazing." And he said, "Dude, I love your tapes. I love what you're doing." He said, "Actually, I came to ask you if you wanted to be my partner. I need a partner." And I said, "Oh, hell yeah."
Yeah, right.
So right there, we became the Hit Squad, and Frankie Bones was with us too at the time. So he was doing a lot of reviews and record reviews, and of course he came up with he was a well-known graffiti artist as well, and that sort of thing. So it was a wonderful learning experience for me. It was like a tremendous jump forward, for me. Almost the very next day, we were at Unique Recording Studio, and he was editing Red Hot for Trilogy. So he let me arrange like a bonus beats, and he gave me the credit. That was my very first credit on a record.
Awesome.
And like most geeks, I picked up a piece of tape and I put it in my pocket.
Yeah. So you still have it?
No, unfortunately, no. I had it for a number of years, but no, I don't know where it is now.
That's crazy. It's a souvenir of the. Oh, that's cool. Great record too. So, and so that was your first record, your first credit.
First credit.
So it was Karina next then, or are there a few in between?
No, we had about a year on. That was like 1986, and at the same time, I was editing with him. We had done, we did, obscure records like, I think Fat Lawrence, Tina for Select Records, things like that. I was editing for Jazzy J. I was editing hip hop records, pop records. So we weren't really doing like freestyle records. We did Duran Duran. I think we did an Aerosmith or a Rolling Stone that never came out, which we did amazing work on, but it never came out. But the thing that we always talk about the most when we reminisce is the Mantronics edit that we did in 1986 that was rejected by Sleeping Bag Records for being too wild. Both Mantronic and Sleeping Bag rejected it. They said it's too crazy at that time. If you listen to it now, it's nowhere near as as crazy as some of this digital editing has become.
Right.
But at that time, we were really pushing the envelope. We invented the Transformer edit in those sessions, because I think it was a 48-hour session that we did straight, just went straight.
Does it still exist? Is it still around?
Well, here's the thing about that, and it really upsets me because that's probably the most incredible collaboration as far as editing is concerned that I've ever been involved in. And because they scrapped it, they shelved the tape, and they hired Chet Nunez to do a brand new one. Nobody heard this for I don't know how many years. And I remember that I when I started After Dark Records with Will Sokoloff, who was at the time was one of the owners of Sleeping Bag. Now he was partners with Todd Terry, Moonroof Records, Freeze Records, eventually After Dark Records, and then I introduced Frankie Cutlass to Will, and that's where Frankie Cutlass did the Puerto Rico record and the whole thing. It's just a lot of labels. So he had closets full of DATs, DAT masters, just closets, they were neatly stacked.
Right.
And in one of the closets, I found our tape. And so this was 1996 when I found it, and it was 1986. So it's been 10 years.
Oh my God.
I found the tape, and I'm like, oh man, this is the tape. And I said, Will, can I have this? And he said, what is it? And I said, it's that edit that you guys rejected that me and Omar did. And he goes, yeah, take it. So I took it. He had already transferred a lot of tape to DAT. So he had it backed up to DAT. So he didn't mind that I took the tape. What I didn't know was that he had licensed a special edition version of that Mantronics album to Europe. And in the Europe release, they put our edit.
Oh.
But they didn't credit me. They only credited Omar. And I didn't know this until I think it was, somebody put it up, and then I saw, and then I clicked the link and I went and I said, yeah. No. And I reached out to the dude and I said, this is, I don't want to curse, but
right.
Yeah. This is really screwed up. Blah, blah. This is the actual way that it went down, and it's something that I'm really proud of. So I want my name to it. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll be going to Discogs later on today, and we'll see if
I actually have the tape. I still have the tape.
All right, cool. I'd love to get a copy. I'd love to hear it. That sounds amazing. So there you go. That's the Mantronics story. Yeah. And Nunez too is no slough either. I mean, he's great.
He was amazing, and I don't think it's really funny because when I hear trap music today, I hear so many elements that he did first in the mid '80s. And I don't think he gets his fair credit. I've seen his name pop up sometimes, giving him credit to but I mean, he really, really was in a league of his own when it came to hip hop and beats and things like that, and the 808, drum machine. And he was.
How does the story go? He it was a fire at his apartment, and he went back in to save some tapes, and is that what happened? Or
I'm talking about Mantronics.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about Mantronics. You're talking about Chet Nunez.
Yeah, Chet Nunez. That's where he passed away. Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly don't. I heard it from somebody who would be a good source. The story, but quite honestly, I wouldn't really know. But yeah, the story was that, that he left his apartment when there was just too much smoke, and the smoke overwhelmed him, and that's what happened.
What a shame. The Mantronics just passed away recently too, right? Like the last year or something.
Did he? No, Mantronics? No, did he?
That's what I.
No, I don't think so. I hope.
Yeah. I hate that for you to hear from me. Okay.
No, don't start rumors. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, so that was my introduction to Omar and the world of editing, and an introduction to the world of being in the studio. That he was the first one that brought me into a studio, so I made my first connection with Unique Recording. Bobby Nathan and Joanne Nathan, who always looked out for me tremendously when I was a kid, and then there came a point, where Omar and I separated, and I felt it was me. I felt that there was no way that I was going to be able to build up a level of respect the way that these guys did, as long as I was in his shadow. And it wasn't
Yeah.
anything Omar did. He was
Right.
just he was a tremendous talent, you know. And I learned so much from him. And from that day, from the day that I told him, what I told him, he said, "Listen, I respect what you're saying, and and it's cool, man. We're always going to be friends." And I promised him I'll always give him the props. I'll always give him the credit, for giving me the shot. And I always do when these conversations come up. I probably would have never gotten in if somebody like Omar hadn't, opened up that door for me. So I owe him a tremendous debt. And then shortly after that was when I met Louis Martinez from Brooklyn, and who was working at that studio, and who somehow finagled the use of a composer's room. There was a composer that was renting space there, and he was a very well-known composer. His name was Chuck Hammer, and he did a lot of television and film. So he had the latest of everything. He had Synclavier. He had this, $20,000 Oberheim and Kurzweil, and one of the first Macs. And the facility was shut down on weekends. So he got permission from the owner for us to be able to go into the facility, and Chuck gave us his key to go into his room.
Cool.
So it was in this massive facility and in this incredible room with equipment that we were able to cut our teeth and basically learn how to use a digital performer, learn how to use the first drum machine, learn how to, and it was a long, frustrating process, because there were many times, because this is a very early performer, on a very early Mac. So, you could work an entire weekend and then just for no reason whatsoever, everything would disappear.
Yeah.
And it happened several times. But that was another, situation where, where Omar opened up that door for me. Louis Martinez opened up the other door for me, and he made it possible for us to, to do Karina's Out of Control, because that's where it was done. And we cut her initial vocals there also. And also Jasmine on the Loose was done in the same room. So those two records were done that way.
That's crazy. Explain can you walk us through, how did you meet Karina? Was that your project, or did you just get to do edits on that, or were you there from the start to the finish?
No, Out of Control. The music to Out of Control was what we struggled to create.
Okay.
From scratch. So it's a very weird record, because the beat is odd. The percussion is really weird. I used a marimba for the bass line. I used another even bigger marimba for like what I call now the after chorus. What happens after the first chorus before the second. Gun 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 gun. Just really weird.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of those Jamaican the metal things. I was just picking sounds that I liked, and I was trying to program the percussion the way that I felt I could do at the time. Very strange record, very odd record. Frankie Bones wrote the lyrics, but he didn't give me, there was no melody. So Karina, when I met her through a friend, came in and she took Frankie Bones' lyrics, and she kind of, she created that melody.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she created that melody, and there was we only ended up using half of Frankie's lyrics, because he had like 4 verses or something like that, So we we just sort of, we just kept trimming it and, pushing it and molding it and trying to fix it. And then eventually it became a demo. And it just so I took that demo to a lot of record labels. I can't remember all of them, but whichever ones I knew, because who we worked with, with Omar, with the editing, we worked with a lot of labels, Polygram, Columbia, Def Jam, just a lot of labels. So I took it all, but they didn't like the record. I even took it to Aldo. They didn't like the record. So the demo kind of lingered for several months. It could have been longer. I'm going to say like something like 6 to 8 months. And then all of a sudden this opportunity came up because of my crew. One of our closest friends from the After Dark crew his younger brother was working at this bowling alley over by Whitestone, and their boss was he owned a concession stand, and he was running it for his parents. So he was older than us, but he wasn't that much older than us. And he wanted to do a big birthday bash for himself. So the kids told him, "You want to do a birthday bash? You got to call Carlos after dark. You know, he's got to do the music, especially if you're going to do something in Flushing, Queens."
Right.
So I met him, and he says, "I found a place, you know, where I want to do this, you know." And I said, "Where is it?" And he goes, "It's on Queens Boulevard." And I said, "Let's go." So we went, and it turned out to be Lemoore East. But this place was, I mean, it was in bad shape. It was a dump. It was bad. I mean, it was horrible with rats. It was just really bad, you know. And I told them, I said, "This place is too big. It's going to be the 5 of us hanging out at Lemoore East celebrating your birthday. So this is not really going to work unless you do like some heavy duty promotion. I don't know what you want to do. How far do you want to go?" And he said, "I want to do it. I want to do it. I really want to go far with this. What do we have to do?" So I called Al Pizarro, because I was in the VIP record pool. And I said, "Al, I got the situation. I need somebody who's hooked up with radio promotions and also can get us, give us an idea of what some acts would cost and that sort of thing." So Al Pizarro hooked us up with another VIP record pool member, Vinny Grillo. And so I met Vinny, and I introduced him to James Strapone. That's the guy the name of the guy that owned the concession stand at Whitestone Lane. So they connected, you know, and they sort of went off on their own and started to formulate whatever was going to happen. So, you know, Vinny saw it as an opportunity because James wanted to go all the way. So he said, "Let's do 20 acts. You know, this is how much it's going to cost." You know, so they reached out to management and booking agents. I think at that time, artist management, I think, was still around. Famous artists.
Yeah, right.
You know, so anything, all that stuff was worked out. Then the radio station, commercials. James did it all. He paid for all this stuff. So all of a sudden, the opening night was a radio, you know, promoted 20-act night, you know, that was being done by people who had never done anything like this before.
Crazy.
Yeah. So opening night was August 20th, 1987. I was the DJ. It was bananas. It was just completely insane. So in the middle of the lineup, you know, James came to me and he said, "Listen, you know, you have to be one of the promoters." I was maybe 22, and I was more interested in what I was doing in the studio. So I was like, "Listen, I have no interest." I said, "I'll DJ. You guys do whatever you got to do. I'm not going to go to meetings and that kind of thing. I'm not interested in that. I just want to be involved with the playing of the music and that sort of thing." So, you know, Vinny Grillo brought in his buddy, Juan Cato. So Juan Cato ended up doing the Friday nights, and I did the Saturday nights. And then little by little, the place grew. But on that first night, I told James, I said, "It's the only thing I'm going to ask for. Put Karina on the lineup. Let her open." So she performed. I was up in the DJ booth. This is a true story. This is what happened. I'm up in the DJ booth, and this was after Aldo already rejected the record. Aldo comes running up after Karina finished performing, and he runs up and he goes, "Yo, Carlos, is that the girl that sang the demo?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Call me Monday." I said, "All right." Yeah. So that's really how the record got signed. You know.
Oh, I love that.
It wasn't my record. It was her. You know. He liked what he saw. You know, her stage presence, and you know. So.
Oh, that's fantastic! What a great story! I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was the first one, and then Make Noise, which was the same year and was being done at the same time, and also On the Loose. So those 3 records were my first 3 records in 1987. So first it was Out of Control, then it was On the Loose, and then I think it was Make Noise. You know.
Wow, 3 great ones.
And once I did those 3, by the time 1987 was over, I was, you know, I had pretty much established myself solo on my own. You know.
I love the story that you tell about Make Noise too, about how you put it together and you just or somebody got a tape and they called you up and said, "Hey man, you got to get down here. I don't think you know what you have."
Yeah, Little Louis Vega and in Studio 54. because there was a little bit of a shakeup. I did my time at Lemoore East, and then outside forces started to come in, and muddled things up, really bad. And things started to get really political and ugly. So I made a move. So Little Louie went from the Funhouse from Heartthrobs to Studio 54. So there was a slot open, at Heartthrob. So I think the manager of the club at the time, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, I think it was John Ferry. So he reached out and he said, "Listen, there's a slot over here. I want to try it. So I played there for like a month, but it was impossible. Louis took his crowd. I mean, they were all gone. So it was just going to be too much of an uphill battle. And I said, this is not a good move for me. So I left. And that was the last time I played in the club. After that, I dedicated myself solely to, just making records.
Making records and production.
Yeah.
And then, so he called just to go back to that story about the big noise. So he played it and he's got the clap your hands, stomp your feet.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. I made that record in Elvin Molina's bedroom in the Bronx.
Yeah.
I did, because I had no place to go to. Like I had an idea. I guess at the time I really had no money at that moment. So I called Elvin and I said, "I heard you have a 12-track. I heard this is the way you guys are doing your records at this moment on the 12-track." He said, "Yeah, I have an Akai 12-track that uses Betamax tapes. And then I run other things live, like keyboards, live 808, that kind of thing." So I went over there.
Pause you. I'm sorry. I just went for the sake of the people that are watching. Alvin Molina is also the guy who did like it was Mickey Garcia's partner, right? So they did he did everything on Micmac and all the Judy Torres records and huge name in freestyle music. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, we have a lot of respect for Elvin. And certain ideas that he was able to put forth that sort of touched us all, And one of those ideas was something that really didn't come out commercially. It was just something that he did as a for himself. He took a Depeche Mode song called "It Doesn't Matter" 2, and sped it up because it's very slow. And while it's on the turntable, he's running the 808 drum machine live, and then he recorded that to a 1/4-inch 2-track. And he made copies for different people. So Little Louie got a copy. Only a select few got copies. Roman Ricardo, I got a copy for Lemoore East. And when we used to put this thing on, people used to go absolutely berserk. Just bananas. And to this day, people who remember, because I think I have it up on my SoundCloud, and anybody who wasn't from that era can listen to it and they're not going to get it. They just like,
right.
Understand what the big deal is. But
I got a copy from Johnny D.
it really was a tremendous thing, that when you heard it in a nightclub. So, we knew this about Elvin, and he had little things like that. He had little gems, so we all recognized how talented he was. And he was always enamored of the European kind of, the Pet Shop Boys, Depeche Mode, which a lot of our people were too, but he really tried to delve into that sound and try to make a combination between that and freestyle. And that Depeche Mode remix was a very good example of that. So, flash forward, I call him up and I ask him if I could just cut this demo in his place, and he said, yeah. So I just brought a couple of records, one of them being the James Brown, Give It Up, Turn It Loose, which interesting piece of trivia. The album that I have says Live from Georgia. And, when it goes, clap your hands, stomp your feet, you hear a crowd in the background and the whole thing. Turns out it wasn't recorded live. They added that crowd after the fact to make it seem as if it was live.
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
yeah.
crazy.
Now this is something that I've read in different places. I don't know if it's absolutely true, but I think it's curious that for a record that would have been recorded live, when they did the remix, because they have that other version that's clean, has no audience in it, no trace of an audience, and it's just super clean. but I used the one from Georgia, that one, Live from Georgia. And I looped it in a certain way so that I took out that last little, that he did. And it started from there. So to me, the record is very simple. Like, I don't know if you watched the 2 videos I put up. I'm going to do more. But I always say, like how the idea doesn't need to be this complex idea. It could just be a very simple idea. And to me, Make Noise really is nothing more than a James Brown loop and an 808 playing using the pattern, the same type of kick and snare pattern of Tears May Fall, because I copied that pattern because that was one of my favorite. That was my favorite record at the time. I used to love that record.
Right.
So that pattern, Make Noise. That's all it was. Everything else is samples. Dun, 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 dun. That was some voice sample that Alvin had. It came. I think it was part of a. Because I had the same keyboard, and in Sonic, the sampler, one of the very first samplers. And so that was one of the samples that came stock with the thing. And so that was the bass. And I delivered it to Profile Records. Brian Chin picked it up on the demo. And then just as I was finishing it up, at the last minute, he said, Corey Robbins wants a vocal. And I said, oh man, what am I going to do? I don't, Carino was the only vocalist that I knew at the time, that's already another situation. So it was Tomax who introduced me to Lisette Melendez. And I met her the day of the session. That's when I met her.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So she came and,
nice to meet you. Hear your headphones.
Yeah. And to be fair to Lisette also, I don't, I didn't know really how to record vocalists yet, and I was asking her to do something that wasn't normal. I had done a string with that melody, da, 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 da. It was a string.
Oh,
said Tomax, write something for her to sing that follows that string. So that's why she's up there. She's like, they break barriers, they die. That's how that happened. So she's not really singing. It's like this falsetto thing that became more of an effect type of sound. But yeah, and also a piece of trivia. Niobe actually was the first person to demo it.
oh, really?
To sing that piece, yeah. And then we couldn't do it with Niobe because Sal from Fever Records just, she was a Fever record artist, so they didn't want her, maybe if they would have known that it was going to turn into something, they would have let her. But, I was a kid that really Out of Control wasn't out yet, or, so I hadn't done anything yet. I had no track record. So they were probably right not to let her do it. But
totally
Lisette ended up doing it. And, yeah, that was a whole other
You had some great success with Lisette. I mean, of course,
Yes. Yeah.
And you guys are still friends today.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, she's just releasing now a record called Stay that we did, that's a little different.
Yeah.
It has a bit of a different sound. She has her own label now, but Ladybug Records.
Right. Is it the same Layla? It's the Layla Payne. Is it the same version, or is it remixed, or is it re-edited, or is it?
She has a new a remix by Mr. Mig.
Oh,
so
cool.
That's a new remix. Mine is the original. So, but it still holds up. It still sounds huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I love it. Hey, I don't want to keep you all day, but let's talk about the new record. We'll just jump forward and talk about the new record now. I'd love to have you come back and do this again. We'll capture you again and talk more. Like I said, I don't want to hold you up all day long, but let's talk about the new Sammy Zone record.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't even know what it's called. I don't have it yet. I haven't heard it. I know nothing about it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's called Believe in Love. And
it is out this week.
We just released the vinyl yesterday. So they're going through the roof. It's crazy.
Awesome.
We're doing orders on eBay, but I also do, like, for the larger orders, like 10 or 20. I'm doing those off the grid, and specifically more for Brazil. They like to buy them in bulk like that, So to not deal with the technicality, eBay has we don't like the shipping part of it. when it comes to Brazil specifically. So we have to find different ways to get it down to them. But yeah, I mean, it's doing phenomenal in just over 24 hours, maybe at this point, maybe 48 hours. I'm going to say we probably moved about 80 pieces already, which is phenomenal, for a record that just came out,
Absolutely. What talent Sammy's own is too, man. What a great voice. Did you do any edits on it? Do you have was there the dubs? What?
Well, just to give you a little bit of history on the record, it was originally I met John Ramirez, the beat mechanic. He works closely with Frankie J, and John is from Texas, and I first noticed him because George Lamont had introduced me to Frankie J, and then shortly after that he released a record called Breakin', which had this really, really cool pop freestyle feel, and it had this double entendre, music video, so it's breaking, so they have kids breakdancing, but it's also Don't Go Breaking My Heart, so I like that, and I like the sound of it. So I found out who mixed it, and it turned out to be John, the beat mechanic. So I reached out to him to congratulate him, and we've been friends ever since. We've been trying to figure out something that maybe we can collaborate on. First, we thought it was going to be a Frankie J record, but it turned out to be this thing. And he sent me a track that he was really excited about because he meant it to be an homage to the original freestyle producers. So I had elements of me, it had elements of Chris Barbosa, it had elements of of the Latin Rascals, and I said, well, this sounds really good, but I can't do something with Sam that is that that's it. It's sneezing. Yeah. I can't do something with Sam, that has that homage thing, so we got to sort of make it our own. So there were elements in it that I really loved that he did. So his chords, I thought were interesting, and also he had this timpani drum that would drop on the downbeat, which is very dramatic in his original demo. So those two elements were like, I said, there's something about this that I like. I really like this. I want to see if I'm right. So I sent it to Frank Reyes in Los Angeles. Frank Reyes, of course, is the person who wrote Lissette's first album, or 95% of it. He wrote the lyric and melody for Together Forever, Day of My Life Without You. He wrote Coro's Do Unto Me. He wrote Anne-Marie's Just Waiting for You. He wrote Promise Me Your Heart, Joey May. So he's a prolific lyric and melody creative. So I sent it to him, and then he calls me back about, I'm going to say 3 hours later, and he's singing me a verse. So I'm like, what? Yeah. So then he sings the verse, and then I don't remember if he did it in one call or two, but eventually he gets to the chorus. So he's singing the chorus, and our partner Lisa Nunziella, because on the film production side, she's in the background there doing a harmony, so it was just a good time for us. And I said, yeah, I think it could work, but we have to change some of the instrumentation, but keeping John's core, the thing that really inspired us. Yeah. So I called him up and I said, John, I love elements of it, but there's things that I'm going to have to strip away. How do you feel about that? He said, bro, if you just use the hi-hat, I'll be happy. So that's awesome. So I said, thank you. So the record has a lot, his original elements, like that, the foundation is there, like the timpani and the chords and one of the main synths, which to me I loved when I heard it, stuff like that was John's, everything else, I just, I had to figure out to make it become a Sammy's own Berrios record, starting with the drums and the bass line. And then of course, we started to add different elements, and we created a bridge that wasn't there, that Frank wrote. And the break is different. I had we did a lot of experimentation. It doesn't sound like a typical freestyle record, which is exactly what I wanted. It just doesn't. It just sounds like something else, and it sounds huge, which is what I wanted. Also, I spent a lot of time on the mix. Does it have edits? Of course, it has edits. I have a 3-minute bonus beat that I cut on tape half-inch on my Atari tape machine, which of course takes time. And I have a tremendous 7-minute dub that I just love, because just like running, it's sort of, when you listen to it, it has all these peaks and valleys that give you, that feeling of the dubs of a long time ago, the way we used to do them on the board and the whole thing. Trying to do that in the box is hard because instead of doing, using your body, you have a mouse and you're clicking things one at a time. Or at least I do. I don't have a controller. If I had a big controller, maybe it'll be different. But I don't have room for that, so I have to do it, piecemeal, and then go back, and then, because you have to sort of microscope, and then you have to stand like 20 feet back, and then, experience it and see if it's working, and then go dive back in, to the microscope. And so it's frustrating, but when you get to the end and you have a dub like this, it's just amazing. Joey May, Seabank, the ending of the dub. Everybody's got to listen to the ending of the dub, for what we did there.
I'm so excited. You know what? The hairs on my arm are sticking up. I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to hear it. Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's awesome.
We're really excited about it.
So the name of the song is
Believe in Love.
Believe in Love.
Yeah.
Carlos
So right
Berrios.
now the vinyl, as of so right now the vinyl is out, and you can get it on eBay. You can probably just, and I've done it a few times. You go to eBay, search "Believe in Love," it pops right up.
All right, cool.
On Tuesday is the pre-sale. Friday it should be available to everybody. Yeah.
Right on. I was gonna. I have this picture hanging on my wall. I'm gonna show you this. You've probably seen it before, but look at this.
Oh, look at that! That's my place. Yeah.
There's your place. Can you see it?
Time ago. Yeah, it's a little reflecting, but yeah, I can see it.
There you go.
Yeah,
There's Eric G. Yeah, we can't. That was a great time.
I'll never forget that. One fork. Private joke. One fork.
Yeah, the 1 fork. I wasn't gonna bring that up, Carl. Yeah. Good. There it is. Believe in Love. Love it. Love it. Perfect.
So yeah, we're really excited about it, and of course, we have other things going on too. The film work always, unfortunately, pulls me away from music, because that's really my bread and butter, and my business. But because of what's happening, with COVID, all film production has stopped. So whatever was sort of at the tail end, because I was working on a project, I was finishing a project for on the post-production end. So probably 2 months in, I was still working when other people weren't, and I still had to finish Sammy's record and get that going. But right now, there's really nothing coming in, so I have extra time, to do with extra records.
Good for us.
So we have some new Seabank stuff coming.
Cool.
I'm teaming up with the Santana Twins. We're probably going to do something really wild, like possibly the Berrios brothers versus the Santana Twins.
There you go. Love it. Love that.
Where the beat mechanic. We're trying to figure out what we can do there. Something new. There, from now to the end of the year, there should be a lot of new stuff, and along with everything that's going on with all the new music, I think it's exciting for everybody, especially now when people need to be excited, and where usually I think you would see more of a competitive spirit. I think right now there's more of a, we should support each other. You know what I mean? And,
absolutely.
And support the music more than, because really that's what it's all about. So if music is supposed to make you feel good, and if somebody's doing the work, they're putting in the work, and you hear something that's good, you got to say it. You got to say that's good. That's good work, man. And I love when people do good work. I love it.
Absolutely. What can I say? Thank you, man. Thanks for taking time to talk to me, man. I forgot we were doing an interview there halfway through, and I was like, oh yeah, we gotta, I was just listening, man. I could, we got to do this more often. I'd love to do this again and pick up with, after Make Noise and talk more.
Time always flies, man. Time always flies. But yeah,
I'm a huge fan, man. I'm a huge fan, man. Only love.
Timmy, we love you, man. You're the best. And, you know, from day one, from the picture, you know what I'm saying? Love you, brother.
You're my guy. Thank you, man. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
All right.
Take care, bro.